This morning I'm talking about, are you a living soul? On the way over here this morning, I was thinking about how when I was 3 years old, I became aware that there was something inside me that was extraordinary, that it was not part of my living situation, my brother or mom or dad. It was very interesting to realize that as a 3-year-old. The year before that, I had been adopted. And so I was adopted when I was 2 years old. And at that point of being 2, I knew that there was something in me that gave us direction, gave a sense of direction, but I didn't know it was extraordinary. I know it was just a feeling. And it was a 3 that I knew, there's something inside of me that is extraordinary. It's really something special. And in the next few years, I recognized, for myself anyway, that this unusual, beautiful, extraordinary part of my inner being was a source of joy and inspiration. And it was filled with music and color and fragrance. It was really, really wonderful for a kid to have such an experience. And then I recognized that that joy was missing from a lot of people. And I didn't understand it, because if this something extraordinary was part of me, it should be part of everyone else. And if it was part of everyone else, why didn't they have joy? Where was their source of inspiration? And then I went through the teen years trying to just basically survive. Teenagers, I have the greatest compassion, probably more compassion for teenagers than anyone else. It's such a difficult time. But anyway, I got through that. And then when I was attending the university, and I'm going to mention this in my talk later, I left my body, and that's when I knew. When I left that body, I was more than the body, and the reason I was more than the body is because of that something special inside of myself. Then I found the teaching, and one of the first, not the first, but maybe the second book that I picked up, called The Hidden Glory of the Inner Man. There was two chapters in there that really spoke to me. One was about space, and the space was alive. It was a living entity. And I was just overwhelmed with beauty and joy to recognize, that space is more than just emptiness. The other chapter was about the soul. And the soul has a location. And holy cow, this is what I've been looking for forever. That the soul has a location in us. But that chapter was so ambiguous, so abstract, it didn't give me a black and white answer. Subsequently, there have been other books about the soul written that now seems to place the spark, our soul, either in the vagus nerve in the brain or in the heart. So that's I don't really care. All I care is that, yes, just like Valerie this morning in the meditation and Richard this morning reading to us from the book of poetry about soul, that we do have something extraordinary in ourselves, within our physical, emotional, mental body. And that something is divine. And it is extraordinary And it is something that once we awaken to it, teaches us we need to respect ourselves and we need to respect one another because of that divinity. Okay, so that's my introduction. I'm going to be talking about 3 terms today: the spark, the unfolding human soul, and the soul. So part of the talk this morning is really more about definitions of what is the spark, what is the human unfolding soul, and what is the soul, because we come from many different traditions of understanding, and I wanted us to be on the same page today so that you don't say, no, that's not right, Joleen. That's not what the soul is, because, and then your because, opens the door to your educational background. So just stay with me today, because what I'm sharing with you is from the Ageless Wisdom teaching and the lineage of Torquem Serdarian and Alice Bailey and Helena Blavatsky and Helena Rourke. So this is a particular lineage that has explained to us what that special something is inside of ourselves, and that we want to stay in contact. We don't want to close the door, whether we're 2 or 3 or a teenager or in our 20s or 30s or hundreds. We don't want to close the door to that special, unique divinity within ourselves. So let's begin. What is the divine spark? What is the divine spark? The divine spark is that fiery, primordial atom. Primordial atom is that atom from the beginning of time, that radiated out from this central spiritual sun. That's the spark. The spark is the seed of life in which cosmos exists. So as a kid at that age of 3 years old, even though I didn't have the words to define what I was experiencing, I knew that it was putting me in touch with something in space, but I didn't have anything concrete to understand what space was or what that feeling was. But at that moment in my 30s, I was drawn to the right teacher and the right books and the right information to now help me understand what all of those experiences were. So we have a divine spark. That divine spark is the fiery, primordial or primordial, however you want to pronounce it, atom, the atom at the beginning of time that radiated from the central fire or the central spiritual sun. So that means to me, this is just one little incarnation that's really short. How many other incarnations has this primordial atom experienced? The spark is a seed of life in which the image of cosmos exists. It is the real identity of each of us, which after we've traveled through all these lower kingdoms, eventually built the human body. The spark is the possibility in each of us. It is the source of life. It is our growth. It is our progress. That's our divine spark. The spark is like a photographic negative on which the self, the capital S self, the spark is like a photographic negative on which the self gradually comes into existence as the image of God. The image of God. This is you. This is us. This is humanity. So each of us is a spark connected to our Father's home through a thread of light. Through a thread of light. This thread of life is the extension of our divine spark. See, as a 3-year-old, I wouldn't have understood a word of what I'm talking about today. See, but now, as our humanity grows up, now we really want some answers. See, to substantiate that inner knowing, I guess. It is this thread of light which will be the path through which our spark is going to travel back home. Therefore, we are told that we are a path. You know, people today use a more colloquial terminology, saying it's your journey. The journey, this is my journey. See, in the teaching, that's understandable because now we understand what it means when we are told that we are the path. Now, the spark. The spark has different names on its path of development. It has different names on its path of development. The spark, during its development, eventually realizes it is not the physical body. See, at 3 years old, that spark is saying, nah, don't get caught up in this. And I was so grateful I didn't have to be so caught up in it. We're not the emotional body. We're not the mental body. The spark is aware that it is an independent entity. It is an independent entity. It's hard to believe because we're so attached and so dependent on so many things. But it is an independent entity. This independent entity uses the lower bodies, uses our physical body, our emotional body, our mental body. And it uses these bodies as the channel of its communication with the 3 worlds. Eventually, it uses other bodies to maintain and sustain its communication with the higher worlds. But we still have to build that path to allow that to happen. Now, the human soul. So that's the spark. Let's talk about the human soul. The human soul indicates all stages of development of the divine spark. The unfolded human soul indicates, it's a term that indicates all the stages of development within our divine spark. Beginning the moment our spark entered into human evolution. And ends, this may surprise you, and ends at the 7th initiation. The human soul is a general term, so it's important to remember this. Important, why? Because if you're studying and trying to educate yourself and understanding the teaching without distorting it, we really need to be very clear, now what the spark is and what the unfolding human soul is. So again, the human soul is a general term, and it refers to all the stages of development of the spark with the moment it entered human evolution. But if we say the word soul, now it has a specific meaning. That term has a specific meaning. The soul is an advanced state of development. So those are the 3 points: spark, unfolding human soul, and soul. When you become a soul, you radiate 12 virtues of the inner lotus. When you become a soul, you radiate the 12 virtues of your inner lotus. Through the fusion with your solar angel, this greater light that is your protector and director and guide, gives you birth to yourself as a soul. It's at this point, now you are a living soul. At this point, your soul now enters into the superhuman kingdom. You are a living soul, one who renounced selfhood and is proceeding toward the all-self. And this gives you another term, which I'm not going to go into very much today, but at this point, as a living soul, you are an arhat. An arhat radiates the rays of 12 virtues with their specific colors. Each ray is a path toward higher sources of wisdom and power and beauty. Last week on the Agni Yoga Living Ethics Community Facebook page, I posted a quote from the book titled My Teachers, Meetings with the Rourkes, which said, and here's the quote, Buddha was concerned about her, and Master Kuthumi treated her. EI, which are the initials for Helena Rourke. EI said in one incarnation, a doctor stole the key from her cabinet, wanting to betray the formula of atomic energy. Wanted to betray the formula for atomic energy to the enemy. And he was against her. This doctor was against her in general. She described her terrible illness at Nagchu, which is a town in northern Tibet, where she almost died from this fiery death. Master Kuthumi treated her with a blue ray. For several days in icy cold conditions, which was necessary, and she was given cold milk. But this doctor gave her opium, almost killing her. She was told that even Buddha himself was concerned. So to repeat, an arhat, like a master, through their aura can radiate the rays of 12 virtues with their specific colors. I tried to find the book, I couldn't, I'm sorry to say. I know it's in my office somewhere in the masses of books on the bookshelves there, but there was an old book, an old manuscript written by Kuthumi. And one of the things he said in there was, when you become an arhat, and become a master, it's like from this point to this point, you have to learn how to control matter. And I've never forgotten that. How can they control matter? This is one of the ways, is through the rays of the 12 virtues of the lotus. We also know that each master can radiate a combination of rays, energy, color, virtues, and sound for specific experiments or situations, like Master Kuthumi was using that blue ray to heal Helena Rourke. So just like we as individuals each have a personality ray, a soul ray, and a monadic ray, an arhat and a master both have their own specific ray. When that entity, let's call the entity an arhat, eventually moves into and becomes a master, that ray becomes stronger and clearer and more powerful. A master that has a specific ray is also the mother of the world. The mother of the world has a specific ray. But we are also told by Master M that the masters can use their joint rays for specific situations. This tells us that at a specific time in our evolution, our soul will become a ray, a path toward higher sources of wisdom and beauty and power. And that as an arhat, our living soul will walk in the halls of the triangle. Whoa, the halls of the triangle. What is that? We know this triangle as the spiritual triangle of the mental body, the Buddhic body, and the Atmic body, the hall of the triangle. So once the spark, the soul, graduates from the mental plane, it enters the energy field radiated out from the mental, intuitional, and Atmic permanent atoms. You see how I'm trying to take us through the evolution now of our spark from where it was a primordial atom to now where it has grown up. When it entered into the human kingdom, it became a human soul. Now it is a soul, it is an advanced consciousness that is now able to function in that hall of the triangle. In other words, there's so much. This is just a 101. It's like this is just so cool. It is now what's happening is our soul is shaping the substance, the energy going into force, going into substance of the higher mental, the Buddhic, and the Atmic planes of consciousness. You need to get this recording so you can really think about this, or pull your intuition down into your mental body and begin to think about what this really means. So now our soul is a living soul. At this stage, our soul is not the physical, emotional, mental bodies. The soul is able to stand outside of these bodies and act as a liberated entity. He is able to stand aside from his lower bodies and act in the space as a liberated soul with pure light, love, and power. Master Moria suggests that one does not need to take extraordinary actions to build their soul, that fire within us. He said, but they need to nourish their soul daily with lofty thoughts, express loving and harmless words, charged with wisdom, and engage themselves in constructive, creative service. The teachings given to us by the great ones are intended to lead us and to lead humanity to themselves. There's a lot in that statement. Intended to lead humanity to themselves. I can't go into it because I have many, many more notes that I want to get to in 10 minutes. So this is good for seed thought thinking. Okay, I'm going to repeat this. The teaching given to us by great ones are intended to lead humanity to themselves. Sparks were scattered, like the theory in astronomy, where we are told a big explosion happened And the universes came into being. Solar systems, galaxies. Imagine this. Solar systems, galaxies, zodiacal signs, everything came into being because of that explosion. But the same explosion happened in the spiritual domain. And the mysteries tell us that the one that we talk about and think about and meditate on became millions and millions of pieces. And we are one of those pieces. This was a shock that affected our consciousness. And as the teachings tell us, we fell into sleep, into an unconscious state of consciousness. The spark lost its consciousness and became identified with where it was related. For example, the first thing they related to was what? Their physical body. So they became physical people, the Neanderthal man. Physical sparks. There was no other consciousness in them because the shock blocked it. You know, if you're really interested in this, Blavatsky wrote some really interesting information about the evolution of the ages. And one year, because I was married to a geologist for a while, and he was written up because he talked about the different ages, the Eocene, the Pliocene, the Pleistocene ages. And I was able to, because of that information, coordinate the ages with how Blavatsky coordinated the ages and working with them together and then relating them to this primordial spark, you know, as it went through involution and evolution. You know, so if you have, you know, a mindset that you really want to know these things, go to Blavatsky and the Secret Doctrine, and you can read and learn more. If I can never find my notes, it was such a hot topic for me, you know, many, many years ago that I made dozens of notes and diagrams and so forth, and I know they're in my office. So if I can find it and pull it out, I'll share it with you. Anyway, at this point where the spark became physical, identified with the physical form, there was no other consciousness in them because the shock had blocked it. 90% of people, and this is a statistic from the teaching, 90% of people, or maybe even more, are physical bodies, nothing else. For example, if you ask someone on the street, or perhaps even those you know, who are you really? They will say, well, I'm my body. Or they'll just think you're nuts. The first step for your progress as an aspirant or disciple is to really know your situation so you do not go into self-deception. You should not call yourself a master. Do not call yourself an initiate or a disciple who is able to do this or that. It is a serious delusion and opens you up to all kinds of problems. At the end of the talk this morning, I'm going to give you a couple of questions you can ask yourself so you will not fall into confusion and delusion and illusion. When you are only identified with your physical body, you don't have a chance to meet yourself. So on your path, you as a spark, as an unfolding human soul, begin to identify with the physical body, then the emotional body. Wherever we are, we think we are just that. When you are identified with your emotional nature, with your desires and aspirations, your hallucinations, your dreams and daydreams and glamours. You think that you are all those things. And when you are all those things, you do not have a chance to meet your real self, because you present yourself to yourself with a different image. I am this and that. Of course, most of you already know these things because you study the teaching. But until you pass through the experience, you will not exactly understand. Experience is different from knowledge. You will say, well, I know these books. I study them every day. I know. Not exactly. It is more than knowing. It is experiencing and knowing. Suddenly you see that you are your anger, you are your hatred, you are your fantasies. Have you ever left your body? Not due to an illness, not due to drugs or alcohol abuse, but naturally. Have you ever left your body? The first time I left my body, really left my body, was in college, in the middle of class. I was playing my violin in the university symphonic orchestra and began to leave my body. Imagine. I managed to put the violin into its case, and I walked out into the hall to the water fountain. So I thought, I hadn't had anything to drink, water, all day long. Maybe I was dehydrated. Once I got to the fountain, I found myself looking down at my body. And then I suddenly slipped back into my body. Of course, my brother took me to the medical clinic because he was there, and I'd had lunch with him afterwards, and he said, we're going to the clinic, you're crazy. But I was okay. Over the next few years, other such experiences occurred. It was a shock, but this shock taught me that I was more than a body, and my studies began. I know some of you have had similar experiences. And when you do, that is the day that you know you are more than your physical body, more than an emotional body, more than a mental body. And it's at that moment we begin to progress, to evolve, and we become a living soul. Symbolically, when you go towards yourself, you become more and more your true self. You manifest a tremendous amount of energy, health, harmony, and integrity. When you no longer identify with your physical, emotional, or mental body is when you are beginning to control yourself. Your soul begins to control the outer form and life and all events. We've heard that somewhere. Your emotions no longer control your speech. Your painful memories no longer control your life. You are identified with your mental body, but that painful memory, that vanity, that pride, that fear, those are the things that are controlling you. When you integrate yourself and become the master of your vehicles, you become a person of power because you are yourself. Everything within you before then is in chaos, a state of chaos. If you are not going toward yourself, everything within you is in chaos. Why chaos? In chaos, you have, let's say, 3 disobedient children. Your physical body, emotional body, and mental body, they fight against each other like 3 monkeys. And you don't know who you are. You say one thing today and make a decision, and then in the afternoon, no, I'm not going to do that. I have to do something different. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And then in the morning, I don't want to do that or this. I want to do something different. And then an argument begins. No, you can't. Yeah. This is chaos. You will become a living soul when you use the energy of the heart of the sun, which is called solar or love energy. Throughout millions of years, humanity tries to love, and as humanity loves, they eventually become a soul. Every thought based on love, every word and relation, any action based on love builds your human soul. Drop by drop, your human soul is constructed. People must be educated to understand the energy of love as the builder and the energy of the human soul. The human soul is love, and as it reaches perfection, love will be perfect. And the human soul, and the human soul is going to be the embodiment of love. The human soul will not become perfect as the Father in heaven or the Son is perfect until it develops the Father's willpower. For those of you that have engaged in that year-long exercise on studying will, you know what this means. The human soul will not become perfect as the Father in heaven is perfect until it develops the Father's willpower. Excuse me. We do not know what willpower is yet. We have a few ideas given to us from the teaching or by those who were able to build their souls and cultivate willpower before they entered into the next solar system. That's a powerful statement. The real duty of a human being at this time is to become a living soul. To do this, we must attract the energy of the heart of the sun, the cosmic magnet, through our hearts. This is what the energy of love is. The heart is the magnet of love energy. The teaching gives us 5 disciplines or activities to help us become a living soul. The first is to ask yourself, what am I? What am I? You can sit under a tree near a river, out in our meditation garden, and think, what am I? Or at night, particularly if you come out here on our property, because there's no lights out here whatsoever, you can look at the stars and turn to yourself asking, what am I? Next, ask, what am I doing? This is big. This is really a big question to answer. Whatever you are doing does not matter, but ask it, because most of what is being done is not from any conscious action. You may be stimulated and pushed and pulled, particularly when you're watching the Patriots fight the Eagles this afternoon. And that's the time to ask yourself, what am I doing? What am I doing? I am acting like this. What am I doing? Stop it. This question will really advance you. The next question, why am I doing this? There are very subtle differences between these questions. What am I doing versus why am I doing it? What am I doing shows exactly what we are doing. We are talking to someone, let's say we're talking to someone. Ask yourself, what am I saying to them? And why am I saying these things? The question is the turning point, because the causes begin to reveal themselves to you. Why? It is because the body wants you to do it. The emotions want you to do it. The lower mind wants, because different causes want you to do different things. The confrontation starts immediately after the question of why you are doing this. This discipline means you are more awake. More consciousness, and more awake means you have more control over your life. I'm running through this. Sorry. These disciplines are very difficult and confronting. It makes you intensely aware of your personality life. The next one is even more difficult. This next level, how can I eliminate these causes that are making me function unconsciously? In my opinion, it takes years to learn how to eliminate these causes. All teachings of the ages, especially the teachings of Christ, are how to eliminate those causes that are making our soul a slave. And the last is to be watchful and pray. This instruction was given by Christ to his disciples. Watchfulness means to keep your state of achievement and not let your beingness slide down to the former level. To pray means to be constantly in contact with higher worlds, with higher sources of inspiration. See, we're going to have to go over this morning. I want to go over this morning. I'm consciously aware we're going to go over this morning. There's a time in a person's life, typically between the age of 35 and 50, where you are filled with life and ideas and a sense of self, and all is good, particularly if you found the teaching and you found your soul group and you're in contact with souls all over the planet that are part of you. But then something happens, and I've seen this through intense observation, where that beautiful time, the door starts to close. And it starts to close because you forgot to work on yourself. Or you didn't give yourself time to work on yourself. And so by the time you're 55 or 60, life begins to take on the color of gray. Green is no longer emerald green. Yellow is no longer gold. Everything is like a dull hue. It's like you have cataracts. And by the time you reach 70, life is just a real bore. But it's not going to happen if you're a living soul. I will guarantee you that. I will promise you that. If you're lucky enough to reach the age of 70 or 80 or 90 or 100 and you are a living soul, the reason you're not bored and life is just a drudge is because you are in contact now with space, with cosmos, with the cosmic magnet, with the higher ashram, with souls all over the world. See, you don't care. You're no longer, in part. Let me put it this way. You are now in charge of your physical, emotional, mental body. Your body may be aging a little bit, but, but it is what it is, and you turn it over to the doctors and to your naturopath and whatever to take care of it. But that's not where your focus is. See what I'm trying to say? Now you are a living soul. When the soul is not awake, the bodies take control. Discipleship is the path on which your soul practices being in charge. So that's it. Isn't that wonderful? It's a great subject. So let me give you the name of that book again, The Hidden Glory of the Inner Man. I'll read those 2 chapters. to start you out on this, understanding this path. You know, the one on the soul and the one on space.